everybody, it's Sarah, and today for me is a review filming day, so this is a review, obviously. And the book I will be talking about in this video is After the Forest by Kel Woods, which I have the Illumicrate edition. I actually only read this book because I got the Illumicrate edition. I think there were some items in the box that I really wanted, which is why I got this book, because usually I only get boxes anymore if I'm actually interested in a book. However, I am actually quite happy that I picked up this box and that I read this book, because this gave me something that I've been craving for a while again. If you've been on my channel a little bit in the past, like so far this year, you might have noticed that I've been complaining a lot about a certain type of book. I don't know how much I've actually been mentioning it in my videos, however, I've been mentioning it a lot to friends, that I currently am missing the experience of just, these are fun books, 4-star reads, with authors that are new to me, or with books that I just randomly pick up. A lot of times, the books that I expect those types of books to be, I end up being kind of disappointed in, or they don't really give me what I want because I can't get attached to the characters, because the world building isn't what I want, etc, etc. And I realized I just need to go back to historical fantasy and also maybe branch out a little bit into certain types of romantic fantasy, because this month I've had a few of those books. I've also had it with One Dark Window this month, but yeah, so this was a 4-star read for me. I randomly picked it up. It is a historical fantasy retelling set just after the 30 Years' War, so I think around 1650 in Germany, in Württemberg. And it's retelling actually isn't the right word, it's an inspired, fairy tale inspired book. And this book on the surface is a story that is set after the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. We follow Gretel, who is now in her early 20s. She's, I think, 22 years old. Her brother, after everything that happened with the witch, has now become a drunk and a gambler. And Gretel is kind of mistrusted within her village. And so there's a lot of things coming together. There's a new baroness raising the tithes and the taxes. There's mistrust being sowed among the village around Gretel because of everything that happened with the witch. And so people now are like, she's a witch also. This is also the time of the witch burnings within Germany or within Europe in general. There's people being found brutally slaughtered in the woods, and there's just a lot of stuff happening. And through all of this, Gretel has to find her way again, and kind of has to find a way also to keep her home, because her brother Hansel gambled away their house, basically. That's roughly what this is, so let's talk about my thoughts on this. I don't have that many negative things to say about this. I mean, this is not like one of the best books that I've ever read with amazing writing. It's not that type of story. As I said, this was just one of those books where I finally was able to just turn my head off and vibe. And with turn my head off, I'm not meaning like accept bad writing or anything along those lines, but like not overthink everything, which is something that I tend to do a lot with world building heavy books or with high fantasy books, which I think was really good with this one. However, a few negative things. First of all, the author is Australian and did this thing that some authors do, where they think for the vibes they have to like kind of season everything with words of the language of the region in which this is set in. So there's times where I don't mind that, and there's times when I do mind that. So for example, times when I didn't mind that in this book was when Gretel, for example, was called Fräulein. Fräulein, for those of you who don't know, is German for like little misses. It's a term that is not necessarily used anymore. I was still called that when I was a younger child by like older men, or sometimes older women. A lot of times it's, however, used in a very, very, like, by now. It used to be more normal, but it's used in a very almost derogatory way, where it's like kind of little miss, you know? So that's also the way that Fräulein was used within this story. So it was almost exclusively used when someone wanted to take away power from Gretel. So I really enjoyed that use of the word. I don't know if it would have come across to English readers. However, for me it was very effective because I just instantly got the aggression that I get when I'm being called Fräulein. There are some men who use it in like a very polite way, but there's the anger you get when you're called Fräulein. It's terrible. Anyway, and then also like Herr, Frau, I don't mind that. However, there were some other things that were a bit weird. First of all, the last names of some of the side characters in the book were kind of weird, but luckily it wasn't the main side characters, so it was fine. Aside maybe Herr Huber, which there's Huber exists as a last name. I've never heard of Huber. It's kind of a weird last name, not gonna lie. And then if things like Bürgermeister, Marktplatz, Rathaus were used, because those are terms that exist within the English language, and where using them in German doesn't add any additional layer of meaning to it. So those types of words I don't really like when they're randomly used in English books. It's kind of, I think in Serpent and Dove it was like that when they used, instead of hot chocolate, they used chocolat chaud. There's no reason for that. Like Marktplatz, just say Market Square or Market. Rathaus, just say, what is it actually? I forgot what it is in English. Bürgermeister, just say mayor. Like, you don't get any additional elements from it. Then in terms of other things where I'm like, I'm not really sure if it's positive or negative, there were a lot of things happening in this story. It worked for me, not gonna lie, it worked for me. However, there was so much happening and so many storylines. For some reason it still didn't feel rushed for me, but just be aware of that, and not everything, not every single storyline was absolutely necessary, not gonna lie. Something else that I'm not gonna say it didn't work for me, because not gonna lie, it kind of added to the amusement of the story for me, and it's something that, again, people who aren't German, or more specifically Austrian, wouldn't get. The main love interest in this book is from Tyrol, which for those of you who don't know is a state, a county in Austria. And when he was first introduced, Gretel kind of was like, okay, I could tell from his manner of speaking that he was from Tyrol. Which, not gonna lie, just imagining him talking in dialect just had me cracking up so much. Pretty much like almost every single time when I actively was thinking that he's from Tyrol and he was speaking, I was translating his lines into dialect. And not to say that dialect isn't sexy, but it's within the context, it wasn't sexy, and it was very funny. It was incredibly funny, especially because Tyrolean, like, I don't mind Tyrolean, but I'm not gonna say that Tyrolean is one of the sexiest Austrian dialects. Not that there is such a thing as a sexy Austrian dialect, to be honest, but yeah, it was hilarious. And then also, like, she was talking to him about like the Alps and how high the Alps are, and he was saying something along the lines of, yeah, they're like, the highest mountains are so big that you have to take half a day to reach the very top. And as someone who has been hiking fairly frequently in like the Alps, half a day is not that much. Half a day is what you would take from the bottom of, like, from somewhere in Vienna or like on the border of Vienna to get to the like house mountain of Vienna, which is the lowest of all the like highest peaks within the state. So like, you know, just like each country has a highest mountain, in Austria each state has a highest mountain as well. And like Hermannskogel, which is the highest peak in Vienna, it's not that high. I think it's like 300, 400 meters or something. And you'd still have to take a few hours to like from the very bottom of Vienna to hike up there. Like, my point is, half a day is not high for a mountain, okay? Especially if you're thinking of like, you know, you can't take a car and like drive to where it's like comfortable to start hiking up or anything. So yeah, that was very amusing and very funny to me, not gonna lie. So there were those little things where it was just very noticeable to someone who comes from the general region in which the book is set in, that the author doesn't come from that region, and maybe sometimes was a little bit lackluster in research. Aside from that, however, as I said, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed Gretel as a main character. She was like tenacious and spicy and just like a lot of fun. I also really enjoyed the relationship between the love interest and her. There was a little bit of a miscommunication trope within this, but the way it was done was like, I really appreciated it because it made sense why there was miscommunication, but it wasn't dragged on like longer than it needed to be. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed how fairy tales were woven throughout the story, because while this is marketed as like, you know, the continuation of Hansel and Gretel really isn't the main story within this, but the main story is like kind of in between, what's it called, Snow White, and then the main fairy tale within this is Schneeweißchen and Rosenrot, so like Snow White and Rose Red, I think is in English, which is not one of the main stories, like, or the main fairy tale. Like, it is one of the more well-known fairy tales if you're from Germany and Austria. It's not one of the really obscure ones, but if you haven't grown up with Brothers Grimm, then you maybe won't know the fairy tale. So that was pretty nice as well. I did enjoy the villainess. Not gonna lie, I found her oddly sympathetic by the end, which was also very interesting, especially for like a fairy tale type book. And yeah, I just had a lot of fun with it. I'm not sure if I can like recommend it necessarily, because like it's nothing out of the ordinary. However, for what it wants to be and what it does, it's just a really fun book, and I had a lot of fun with it, and that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say for this review. And with all of that said, well, actually, one more thing, like, if you're expecting crazy twists within this story, no. Like, there's some reveals that happen in the story, but they are pretty obvious, not gonna lie, most of them. I mean, there is one that's kind of just like, okay, I guess we're doing this now, but in a good way. Like, sometimes, okay, I guess we're doing this now is a negative thing, but for me, in this book, it was a positive thing. So, yeah. With all of that said, if you have read the book, tell me in the comments down below, or did I pique your interest in it, maybe? If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media, as well as to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where we read one adult fantasy book written by a woman and genderqueer person per month. That I'll get it out. Will be linked down below anyway, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!